So the PS5 has been officially announced. It was dropped in a presentation by Sony. Let's be honest, if you're anywhere on the internet, you will have seen it or heard of it or seen 27 videos released about it in the last 12 minutes. I'll talk about the obvious stuff and then we'll talk about the not so obvious stuff that's got me very concerned for the future. The biggest takeaway here is that it's going to cost you at least one kidney in order to get this. And that's of course assuming you're happy to not have a disk drive, because if you do want one, it's going to cost you extra on top. The prices for this thing are crazy, but not only that, it doesn't really make much sense across regions. So it's $700 in the US, but it's £700 in the UK, it's 800 euros, and then it's God knows how many yen. And that's of course not even touching upon how much it's going to cost you in Canada or Australia or anywhere else. This thing is mind-numbingly expensive, and it's a mid-season launch. Pro consoles are not a new concept, they're not a new thing. Sony's PS4 Pro was very successful. The difference there, of course, is that it launched cheaper than the PS4 originally cost. This PS5 Pro is launching, what, 200 or 300 quid more expensive than what the PS5 cost at launch. The biggest question really is it worth it? And of course, until we get our hands on it, we're not really going to know. I won't be buying one, that's for damn sure. So I'll have to rely on other people who buy them, who show them off. Speaking of showing them off, in the presentation, they tried to show the difference between the PS5, just bog standard version, and the Pro. And a lot of people are putting these images side by side. They're very compressed because of YouTube or X or whatever, and they're saying you can't even tell the difference. You can, let's be honest with each other. You can put them side by side and you can spot some differences. It's mainly in background and maybe some like tree textures, grass and things like that, but there is definitely a difference there, but I don't think there is a £200 or £300 difference. I don't know how many people are playing these games and are just staring at the background. And of course that is when the image is side by side with that of the original. If you're playing the game on a Pro or just the standard PS5, you don't have the other image next to it running alongside in exactly the same frame. You're not going to see the difference, so you've got to ask yourself, well, is it worth me buying this Pro console if I'm not really going to notice the difference? And of course, frame rates is a big thing. Not that it was back in the day. No one knew what a frame rate was back in the day of even like the PS2, for example. These days, companies use them to push their consoles. Oh, it's all about the frame rates. And whereas that is absolutely true, I do always like click performance mode, for example, when playing a game. I want it to run much better than I want it to look. Rust is a perfect example of this on the PC. As time goes on, my PC gets worse and worse, and I don't want to upgrade it because it's very expensive. And despite popular belief, I am poor. And I'm also tighter than a duck's ass. So when playing a game like Rust, for example, I have two options. I can upgrade my PC to get a better performance, to make it look better while getting a higher FPS, or I can make it look like a 3-week-old banana but have at least sort of 55 FPS, which is what I choose to do, because at the end of the day, it's better that I can actually play the game at a decent frame rate than have it look beautiful but try and play it at 12 FPS. But it isn't that bad. The PS5 is a fantastic console, and this goes hand in hand with like the Series X, for example, as well. These machines are not even touching their capabilities, and that's because we're still pandering to the older generations, and I've spoken about this in other videos before. The newest generation, PS5 Series X, is being held back by the PS4 and the Xbox One, because developers are still having to make games for these consoles because of that shortage we had at the launch of the current generation. So for Sony to come out now, when this generation is just finally ready to start get going, and to throw another spanner in the works almost with a Pro, is a bit baffling. I understand that they want to make money, and it's evident that they want to make money by how much they've priced this thing at. I just don't really understand why they've done this in the way that they've done it, and whether they'll actually benefit from it. But of course, I'm not a shareholder, so whether they benefit from it or not doesn't really affect me. And I'm not really the target audience for this thing, because let's be honest, people will still buy it. Despite all the backlash, despite everyone making videos about it, criticizing the price, saying it can't really be worth it, side-by-side comparisons, yes, you can tell the difference, but it's minimal, those people will likely still buy the console. And I know you're thinking that I'm going to as well, but I absolutely will not. I will never own a PS5 Pro console unless one falls in my lap for a $5. And let's be quite frank, that ain't gonna happen. Now, I'm just a normal person behind a camera sharing my thoughts on this, but I don't actually think we needed a Pro console in this generation. I think it took so long to get going. The games were very few and far between for where we are right now. So to introduce a Pro console to play what exactly? That's the question. Sony have actually released a list of games that will be enhanced by the PS5 Pro's performance at launch, and there are 12 of them. So Assassin's Creed Shadows Darksiders, which I don't believe is out yet, so that's one new release we have. Demon's Souls, Dragon's Dogma 2, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Gran Turismo 7, which by the way looks fantastic, but at the same time, it does kind of still look fantastic on a normal PS5 as well. Hogwarts Legacy, Horizon Forbidden West, which once again looks fantastic, but again, looks fantastic on a normal PS5. We have Spider-Man 2, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, The Crew Motorfest, The First Descendant, and The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, which, again, to be fair, when they put them side by side, you could tell the difference in some of the detailing in the background. There were some foreground images that look pretty good as well, but you had to have them side by side for you to go, oh, there is a bit of a difference there, fair play. But I just don't see how anyone can justify spending that much money on that minimal of an upgrade. But that's, of course, talking about older games, which, by the way, side note, from what I'm hearing and what I've seen, developers of older games are going to have to patch their games in order for them to take advantage of the PS5 Pro. So it's not just like pick up a random PS4 or PS5 launch title, stick it into the console, and it all of a sudden is going to run and look better. It's not. It's going to need to be patched by the developer. And if they don't put the effort into patching it, which would they really go to the effort of patching it when most people are going to be picking these games up secondhand or in some fire sale online where the game's only going to cost you a couple of quid anyway? Will they go to the effort of doing this? That's the question, and we don't have the answer. I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second and look at this from the other side of the fence. If you don't currently have a console, the PS5 Pro could be quite appealing. It will absolutely be the best way to play console games. And although there are only 12 games on the list of those that will be enhanced by the PS5 Pro, that's not to say that new releases won't be enhanced, because of course now developers are going to be making these games with the Pro in mind. The worry really, though, I suppose, is that the Series S exists, right? That is a downgraded bit of kit. It's fantastic, don't get me wrong, I still actually really like the concept of it, but that is going to drag down third-party games that come out for the Xbox and the PlayStation, because how can you optimize a game and have it run on a Series S, but then also have it look phenomenal on a PlayStation 5 Pro? And I'm no developer, so I don't actually know, but if the industry are already complaining about the Series S bottlenecking the current generation, how is that going to work for the PS5 Pro? So let's assume for a second it's going to bottleneck things even more. Now you're looking at exclusives. So you'll have a handful of games that are enhanced by the PS5 Pro's capabilities, and then you are literally just waiting for exclusives to come out to take advantage of the graphical improvements, because that's right, there are no CPU improvements here. There are plenty of games out there who rely on CPU power. I would imagine City Skylines, for example, is one of those type of games. It can look very, very pretty, but there is only so much a GPU is going to be able to do with that type of game. A lot of it is just processing power, and it hasn't been upgraded at all from the original PlayStation 5. So the system will still run into certain bottlenecks in certain games. There's an awful lot to think about when buying this, and of course it is aimed at the enthusiast. So if you currently have a PlayStation, you love PlayStation, you have loads of games for it, you play it constantly, I'm sure you're looking at this thinking, God, that's expensive, but I'm still going to buy it. And that's absolutely fine. If you can see the value in this, or you just want it for the sake of having it, the Apple effect as many people are calling it, then go for it. Whatever makes you happy, so long as you can afford it, of course. And everyone is criticizing this thing till the cows come home, but at the end of the day, if this thing ends up selling well, we may have a problem. And when I say we, I mean physical collectors, because of course I was going to turn it round to talk about physical. It doesn't come with a disk drive. That is sold separately. Now, like I have mentioned, I think in this video, I do like the idea of being able to buy an external disk drive to a certain extent. It does give people the option to buy it digitally and then to turn it physical, but it does make me a little bit concerned about the future of gaming, because this is an insight, not only with the disk drive, but the price as well, actually, into the next generation of consoles. And I know, we're mid-generation right now, okay, so we do have an XX amount of time to worry about this, but if £700 is the price of a Pro console in 2024, how much is it going to cost for the next generation of PlayStation and Xbox consoles in 2026, 7 or 8, whenever they decide to release them? And that is another thing, of course. When are we going to get the next generation of console? I mean, to be fair, this one hasn't really even got going yet. To expect a new generation in 2026 is a little bit silly, but at the same time, I can absolutely see it happening. And with Xbox not releasing a Pro console and just giving us a quick refresh of a digital console with a slightly bigger hard drive, drive, it does actually lean into Xbox don't feel like they need to release a Pro console, and they've actually said that they don't feel like they need to. But if there are another 4 years of this generation to go, then a Pro console might actually be a good thing. And it's going to be very interesting when we finally know the release year of the next generation, because if it is going to be 2026, even if it's going to be 2027, to charge 700 quid for a Pro console without a disc drive, without a vertical stand, with no games, and a bog standard controller, I cannot believe they didn't put their Pro version of a controller in the box with this thing. Absolutely crazy. As I was saying, for them to release this at 700 quid 2 or 3 years before they release the next generation of console, which is likely going to cost around £700 to £900, and I can't believe I'm saying that, it almost made my eyes water. That is just, I mean, it's almost extortion at that point. I mean, it's so ridiculous, and people are going to break the bank to buy these things. They have to have the latest and greatest, the newest shiny thing. We've speculated a lot in the past whether the next generation is going to have a disc drive, and if it doesn't and it's just an all digital console, that's when gaming is going to be a very dark place for me personally, because I absolutely love physical games. I don't collect anything and everything, I just collect what I'm passionate about and what I want to play or what I have played in the past, etc. When it comes to the newer consoles, I collect what I want to play, what I'm interested in, and I don't really like playing games on Game Pass necessarily, and if I do play a game on Game Pass and it has a physical release, I will still buy the physical version of it at some point. But with this console coming out being digital only, and if you want a disc drive, you've got to buy it separately from a different system that they released months ago, it does beg the question, if the PS5 Pro is successful at launch, it sells out everywhere, will Sony take that as a sign that the latest generation doesn't need a disc drive? People are happy to buy an all digital machine, or the external disc drive isn't selling particularly well, or it's selling okay, it's not selling on par with the Pro. I think we can probably ditch the disc drive at this point, go all digital, and that's the future of gaming. I'm pretty sure Xbox said that the next generation of console will have a disc drive, or at least they've hinted towards it having a disc drive, saying that they're not turning their back on discs and physical media, and I really, really hope that is the case, because I mean, on top of everything, the ability to put in a 4K movie is something that a lot of people will take for granted here. That goes against everything that Microsoft have always pushed in our faces, that their consoles are meant to be the hub of the living room. How can it be if you go all digital? So that does give me a little bit of hope that we will see in some capacity or another a disc drive, but it does make me concerned that if the PS5 Pro sells well without a disc drive, it will change consumers' minds to think, well, actually maybe I don't need a disc drive. I like it there for convenience, but I don't actually use it as much as I thought I did. Sony will think, well, it's selling well, we don't need one, and that becomes the norm. Speaking of becoming the norm, of course, the price. The price is a huge thing that people are just ribbing on constantly. It's bare bones in the box for 700 quid, and if you want anything extra on top, it's going to cost you again. I'm actually surprised they put a controller in with it. If this was a PS6 and they had a new game to show off alongside it, not just a 4-year-old game with slightly upgraded graphics, then it would be more impressive. Oh, this is the new controller, this is the new console, these are the new set of games you're going to get for it, there is a stand included, that'll be £700 please. Actually, yeah, okay, because that's how I'm going to play the latest generation of games, and I have all these games at launch to choose, and it comes with a disc drive. But it's not that at all, is it? It's 12 games that will look slightly better than they did before, on a console that you likely already own, without a disc drive. So if you do have physical games right now, unless you go out and buy a disc drive separately, tough. You might as well sell those and you're going to have to buy them all digitally. It's just a massive slap in the face, and I know that they're looking at enthusiasts for this. They're looking at their hardcore gamers, and that's absolutely fine. But it is a big, big red flag for me for what is to come in the future. I really hope that this has got nothing to do with whatever happens in the next generation of consoles. I love playing video games. I love collecting video games. And if the next generation of consoles interferes with that in any way, it's just going to leave a sour taste in my mouth. And I am genuinely worried about what's going to happen in the future. What did you think about the PS5 Pro presentation? Despite all of the backlash and everything, are you still going to get one? Let me know in the comments. There's no right or wrong answer. If you're going to get one, that's absolutely fine. If you can afford it, don't let anyone tell you you don't need it. I'm not here to say don't buy it. If you've got the money and you can afford to buy it, absolutely go ahead. Let me know how it is. Is it worth the extra money? What games do you plan to get? Any off the list? If you'd like to check out another video from me, you can click here, and until the next time, goodbye.